Hey, what's going on? Where are you right now? Well, I just left the house, like you said. Is there a problem? My name is Emily. I'm a 35-year-old housewife living with my in-laws. My husband, Max, is on an overseas assignment, so it's just me at home with them. My father-in-law had a stroke last year, leaving him with a bit of paralysis on his left side. Despite that, he's actively working on his rehab and moving his body. As a result, it took some time, but he's recovered enough to handle most of his daily activities. Originally, my father-in-law made a name for himself as an investor. Before marrying Max, I used to work at a brokerage firm, so I really admire him. Living together has given us the chance to often discuss investments and assess management, and I think we've built a very good relationship. My mother-in-law, Helen, is a person who laughs softly and never engages in what people typically call bullying. She seems delighted watching father-in-law and me discuss financial matters. Emily, it's so good for Dad to have someone to talk to. He won't be bedridden, and it looks like we won't have to worry about dementia for a while. The way mother-in-law tenderly supports father-in-law is something I aspire to. I want Max and me to be a couple like them. I really feel that way. However, lately, I've noticed that mother-in-law seems to be struggling more as she sits on the sofa. We had her tested at the hospital and found that she's getting physically weaker. Her blood pressure is also a bit high, and the doctor advised her to take it easy. Mother-in-law, you've been holding down the fort here for so long. Please take some time for yourself. I said that as I comforted her and took over the housework. But that's not fair to you, Emily. You have to take care of Dad, too. Father-in-law can manage his showers and using the bathroom on his own. All he needs is someone to accompany him on walks and doctor visits. Emily. At this point, I came up with a proposal to reassure my mother-in-law. How about I ask Mom to join Dad on his daily walks? It'll be like a daily walking date for the two of them. I can't believe you, Emily. Well, I guess we'll take you up on your offer until I'm feeling better. Leave it to me. And so, life with my parents-in-law continued peacefully. My only concern was my sister-in-law, Sophia. Sophia constantly throws passive-aggressive comments my way. So, Emily, still no kids? Max is overseas, and these things happen when they happen. Can't even give birth to an heir, what a waste. We'll try to meet your expectations once Max is back in the country. Don't get too comfortable. I also have inheritance rights to this family's assets. It's just like that. I could directly confront her, but it's exhausting and I don't want to upset my parents-in-law. Ignoring her gracefully is where I show my skills. Maybe Sophia thinks I married into the family to inherit my wealthy father-in-law's assets. It's common to have a mother-in-law-father-in-law feud, but in my case, it's with my sister-in-law. One day, I was having tea with my in-laws on our sunny porch. Emily, I have something to discuss with you. For the first time, mother-in-law looked serious. Yes, mother-in-law, what is it? Actually, Sophia is going to give birth soon and she wants to temporarily stay at her parents' house to get support from our family. Oh, is it that time already? That's wonderful news. I sipped my tea as I responded. Given that your father is unwell and I've also been under the weather, making you handle the household chores, we're thinking of declining her request. I agree. It wouldn't be fair to impose more on you, Emily. My father-in-law looked genuinely concerned as he spoke. Oh, don't worry about that. I'm sure Sophia will be more comfortable at her parents' house. Besides, you two will be close by to watch over your grandchild. I'm happy to help out. Let's have Sophia come over. Upon hearing my nonchalant answer, my mother-in-law's face clouded even more. Thank you, Emily. To be honest, we'd love to have Sophia here so we can see our grandchild up close. But the way she's been treating you, it's truly regrettable. Your mother's not feeling her best these days either. In the end, it seems like the burden will fall on you, Emily. And that's concerning. My father-in-law also seemed to worry about me. Sophia has made snide comments to me several times, but for the sake of my in-laws, I chose not to retaliate. This has apparently led to Sophia getting more audacious, in turn causing unnecessary worry for my in-laws. Did I mess up here? Once the baby arrives, Sophia might mellow down. I'd love to see you two enjoy your grandchild. What I truly wanted to say was that I wouldn't be beaten by the likes of Sophia, but I just grinned and bore it. If you say so, then maybe it's okay to invite Sophia? I promise to take care of her as much as I can. My mother-in-law finally showed a smile. My father-in-law also seemed relieved. At first, maybe it was because the baby would be born to their biological daughter. They wanted to be close to the experience. Emily, we're truly sorry. And thank you. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law bowed their heads. Hey, no need to bow. Let's lift our spirits, prepare a room for sister-in-law, and go shopping. Hee, I can't wait. Can I come along to choose some clothes and toys for the grandchild? All three of us laughed, wrapping up the discussion. My stay at my in-laws while sister-in-law gave birth was likely going to be just a month or two. I thought I'd just have to avoid any sister-in-law drama during that short time. That's what I thought. Until that phone call from sister-in-law. My mother-in-law quickly conveyed her consent to sister-in-law, agreeing that she could stay with the family temporarily while she gave birth. After dinner, my phone rang. It was sister-in-law. Hello, sister-in-law, how can I help you? Hey, Emily, I'm going to be staying at our parents' house for my upcoming childbirth. Yes, mother-in-law told me earlier today. Sister-in-law was speaking loudly, maybe she was in a good mood. My in-laws paused, realizing the call was from sister-in-law just by the voice leaking from my phone. It was loud enough for them to hear even without a speaker. So, can you get out? What? I couldn't help but raise my voice in shock. My in-laws were equally surprised and jumped a little. I don't even want to look at you. Just seeing you irritates me. Make sure you're out of the house by the time I get back. Sister-in-law, what are you talking about? Tell Mom and Dad you're going on an extended trip or visiting Max. I don't care. Just get out. I want to spend time with my family. Wait, hold on. Normally, I could easily dodge sister-in-law's barbs. But this time, I was too shocked to find the right words. Once I'm back, you better come back too. You need to take care of Dad, who needs long-term care, and my weak mom. Sister-in-law. I won't take care of them. That's your job as the dater-in-law. Be grateful I'm giving you a reason to stay in the house. That's awful. How can you say that about your own parents? Enraged by sister-in-law's cruel words, I couldn't help but shout at her. Oh, scary. I'll just tell Dad and Mom that you yelled at their pregnant daughter. I clenched my mobile phone and tears started to fall. Using my parents only for the birth and then ignoring them? They are such wonderful, kind people. I couldn't hold back my tears of anger and frustration. Glancing at mother-in-law, I noticed her face was red with rage, tears gathering in her eyes. In that moment, my own sister-in-law told me she wouldn't take care of her family. The frustration was overwhelming. Just then, father-in-law tugged on my sleeve. When I turned around, father-in-law had a note in hand. It's okay, we have a plan. Just agree to what Sophia is saying for now and hang up the phone. I read the note, and father-in-law patted my arm with a reassuring smile. As if to calm my nerves, his touch was light. Seeing father-in-law's smile, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Though my insides were boiling with anger, I was able to regain my composure. Understood. When are you planning to come back? Maybe next Friday. Then, I'll make arrangements to leave the house by that time. You should have just listened from the start. Dealing with a stubborn sister-in-law is so tiresome. I have to clean up after dinner, so if you'll excuse me. As soon as I hung up the phone, mother-in-law broke down in tears and hugged me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. To have a daughter who'd say such horrible things, I'm so sorry. Mother-in-law's tears were flowing freely. I'm fine, mother-in-law. You must be the one feeling terrible after hearing all that. I wasn't concerned about what sister-in-law had to say. I could silence her with logical arguments if need be, it's not a big deal. But it's hard to see my mother-in-law cry like this. I'm really sorry. You've been very patient. My father-in-law sighed. Don't worry about me. What's your plan, though? I asked him, trying to comfort my mother-in-law. Well, turns out there's another person struggling with Sophia. We're planning to discipline her together. Another person having issues with Sophia? I was puzzled. Who else could be dealing with her? We've only got 10 days until Sophia comes home to have her baby and seek the family's support. No time for tears. We need to start planning how to handle her. Yes, this is where you, Emily, will prove your worth. My mother-in-law wiped her tears and stood up. My worth? I had no idea what she meant. Shortly after, Evan, Sophia's husband, came to visit. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for Sophia's terrible behavior. Evan bowed to my parents-in-law and me as he entered. Emily, meet the other person who's been grappling with Sophia. My father-in-law said with a smile. Before joining this family, I worked in a brokerage firm. As did Evan. We knew each other professionally. I don't mind what she says about me, but I can't forgive her for how she talks to you too. I vented my frustration about Sophia to my brother-in-law. He scratched his head and sighed. Look, there's no excuse for her. Even when I try to correct her, she loses her temper. Her already spoiled nature has gotten worse with her pregnancy. My own daughter told Emily to leave while she stays here to give birth. Can you believe it? My mother-in-law was angrier than I'd ever seen her. I get why you and my father-in-law get along. You're in the same line of work. It seemed fun. Sophia probably just couldn't stand it. Wait, so she's jealous because I get along with you and my mother-in-law? I was dumbfounded. She hurt her parents this much out of petty jealousy? And there's one more unbelievable thing. My brother-in-law began to talk about Sophia's actions. Are you kidding me? This makes no sense. I couldn't believe my ears. My hands were shaking from anger. I'm at a loss, too. I've even consulted with my father-in-law about what to do. My mother-in-law looked like she was throwing in the towel. At this point, I was fuming. She plans to rely on her parents' home like nothing happened. She should have been confronted head-on. In hindsight, I regretted my naivete. Father-in-law sighed, looking disappointed. Add this latest mess to the mix, and I'm done giving her any slack. She's my daughter, but enough is enough. Your conversations with father-in-law have finally paid off. My conversations with father-in-law? Wait a minute, you mean? Something clicked in my mind, recalling a discussion I'd had with father-in-law in the past. We might as well go all in. Get ready, Evan. Yes, father-in-law. Mother-in-law finally cracked a smile. All right, Emily, we've got a week to prepare everything. We're going to be busy. Absolutely, mother-in-law. Let's do this. I rolled up my sleeves and followed mother-in-law. The next Friday, as planned, sister-in-law returned home temporarily to seek family support for her childbirth. I wonder if that annoying woman finally left. Now I can just laze around here for a while. Maybe I should just move back home for good. Sister-in-law hummed as she walked onto the property. Then, right in front of the house, she dropped her bags and froze. What is this? What stood before her was, indeed, her parents' home. Well, it used to be their home. Now, the gate was locked, the name plaque removed, and a for sale sign was prominently displayed. The windows were bare, and the house obviously looked abandoned. What's going on? Why is nobody here? Sister-in-law frantically called both father-in-law and mother-in-law, but neither answered. They'd had enough and blocked her number. Even social media was blocked. Why are Mom and Dad answering? Maybe she will. Sister-in-law seemed to get the idea to call me. Hello, sister-in-law, what's going on? I answered her desperate call, cool as a cucumber. Sister-in-law, anything but composed, started shouting right away. What's the meaning of this? My parents' house is for sale. She was loud enough that father-in-law and mother-in-law could probably hear without even needing speakerphone. I moved the phone away from my ear and replied. That house and the property have been sold. There's no place for you to stay temporarily while seeking family support for childbirth. Sold? What do you mean? We were told to leave by you, so we did. Don't joke with me. How can my parents' house be sold just because you left? Well, the house is in my name. Why keep it just for you? What are you talking about? You sold the house without telling my dad? You thief, I'll sue you. Seemingly forgetting she's pregnant, sister-in-law was yelling in a fit of rage. I let out an exaggerated sigh. Did you not hear what I said, sister-in-law? The house is in my name. So why is my parents' house in your name? That's insane. Because I bought it when father-in-law got discharged after his stroke. You bought it? Yes, father-in-law had become somewhat downhearted after recovering from a stroke. He'd lost confidence, having stepped away from his investments during his recuperation. That's when we started talking about restructuring assets. My husband can't act quickly, he's usually abroad for work. And if we left it up to selfish sister-in-law, she'd probably only take the assets that suited her. Father-in-law, how about we liquidate all assets into cash? That would make management easier. I suggested we convert all the assets to cash, making it easier for father-in-law to manage. That's when I purchased the family home, using savings from my single days and from my husband. By putting it in my name, I took on all the tedious procedures like property taxes. We let my parents-in-law continue to live there, so they could spend the rest of their lives in the home they loved. That was, until sister-in-law messed it all up. What are you doing? Where are you? We left the house, just like you asked. Anything else? Don't mess with me. Where are Mom and Dad? They'd never allow this. Sister-in-law still seems to think her parents are on her side. It's almost laughable how naive her thinking is. Father-in-law and mother-in-law are with me. We sold the house, but we've arranged another one. Then I'm coming there too. That's not possible. You're blocked by father-in-law and mother-in-law, remember? They don't want to see you. I say it coldly. Sister-in-law seems taken aback, especially when I mention being blocked. You may not have noticed, sister-in-law, but father-in-law and mother-in-law heard that phone call when you told me to leave. Sister-in-law's face visibly pales. Her earlier bravado instantly deflates. She clearly had no idea they'd heard that call. Listen, can you tell Mom and Dad it's a misunderstanding? I'm about to have a baby. I need help. It's going to be tough postpartum. Sister-in-law changes her tune, suddenly playing the victim. That's when I play my final card. Why not ask the guy you've been cheating with for help? How do you know about that? The unbelievable thing brother-in-law told me about was sister-in-law's affair. We knew because the timing of sister-in-law's pregnancy coincided with brother-in-law's long business trip. Brother-in-law already had screenshots and other evidence of the affair. Sister-in-law had planned for brother-in-law to raise the child she was expecting with her affair partner. I gotta tell you, brother-in-law is pretty angry too. Wouldn't be surprised if you get dumped, I say in a half-joking tone. Then the phone abruptly hangs up. She's probably scrambling to call brother-in-law right now. Brother-in-law has already expressed his intentions to divorce and seek alimony. My in-laws are cutting off communication with sister-in-law and moving to exclude her from any inheritance. We're leaving our estate in the hands of Max and Emily. They decided. Emily's involvement has made it so much easier. The estate is just money now. It really simplifies the management and paperwork. They add. Father-in-law had recorded the call that angered them from halfway through. With the evidence held by my in-laws and brother-in-law, sister-in-law lost both her family and her share of the inheritance. A month has passed since. Sister-in-law and her husband Evan are now divorced. She faced indisputable evidence of her affair and was hit with a hefty settlement in the divorce court. Apparently, she left the home she shared with brother-in-law, pregnant belly and all. Word is, she gave birth alone and quietly. And now lives in an old public housing unit, raising the child by herself. Struggling to care for the baby on her own, she receives help from no one. Why is nobody calling me? I'm tired. I'm lonely. I'm broke. She laments. Rumor has it, even her affair partner abandoned her just before the baby was born. She hasn't been able to establish paternity or receive child support. Sister-in-law ended up living on TANF while paying off the alimony debt. She has to find a job and support herself before she can start repaying her debt. When will sister-in-law ever be debt-free? If she'd truly loved and valued the in-laws, even with a child from her affair, she wouldn't have ended up alone. The child is innocent and is the first grandchild for the in-laws. If sister-in-law can genuinely apologize for her mistakes, both we and the in-laws are open to helping her. Today, I'm having tea with the in-laws in our new home. Emily, what's your take on the Willowbrook Mart? Well, I still think they will rise. What's your opinion, father-in-law? I'm inclined to think they'll go up, but I can't be sure. Father-in-law was looking puzzled when mother-in-law peeked at the papers. Oh, talking about Willowbrook Mart? They're really popular right now for their new desserts, she said, laughing. We both chuckled. Your mother-in-law seems to know more about the stores than we do. Having mother-in-law check out the stores of companies we're interested in investing in is a good research strategy. It's not about the money. I genuinely love these wonderful in-laws. Ever since becoming estranged from sister-in-law, I've been free from her influence. With my expertise in asset management, I've been able to alleviate the in-laws' concerns for their retirement. As I await my husband's return, my days are filled with peaceful smiles. The first to give birth should be my daughter. Don't you dare have a child until my daughter is married. That's what Evelyn, my mother-in-law, said as she kicked my pregnant belly. Despite being a mother herself, It seems Evelyn knows nothing about him. The one who's really scary when angered isn't me. It's actually my husband, Andrew. My name is Amelia. I'm 38 years old. A cherished name given by my parents. I've always tried to live my life with positivity, but there was one time, the only time in my life, when I couldn't feel optimistic. It was back in my late 20s. When I decided to marry my now husband Andrew and visited his home for the first time. Even before going, "Be prepared, my parents are a bit odd," Andrew had warned me. But I, too carefree, thought it wouldn't be that big of a deal. "What? My parents are pretty out there too, quite the handful." That's how I responded. However, within minutes of arriving at his parents' home, I realized how naive I had been. Upon seeing me, Evelyn, my mother-in-law, frowned and said, "Bringing home some unknown woman all of a sudden, and to get married before Ella? What are you thinking, Andrew?" I was dumbfounded when Andrew suddenly got scolded. "If you keep saying that, I'll never be able to get married." And Andrew replied to Evelyn with a reluctant sigh. It turns out Evelyn had hoped that Ella, Andrew's sister, would marry before him. It's only natural for the firstborn to marry first. She had a strong fixation on this. It would make some sense if my sister-in-law Ella had a boyfriend or something. But she has barely left her room since middle school. According to Andrew, after Ella made fun of a friend's looks and turned her into a laughingstock, she herself got ostracized by her peers. She then declared, "People can't be trusted, they're the worst," and stopped going to school altogether. The problem lies with Evelyn and the late father-in-law, Samuel. They doted on Ella so much. "There's no need to go to a place with such horrible classmates. We'll support you for life." That they comforted her with. Ella took those words to heart, or rather, enjoyed them too much, and to this day, at 30, still receives an allowance from her parents, buying comics and games online to enjoy in her room. The only time she goes out is for anime events. Of course, the money for that also comes from her parents' wallets, and she doesn't work. What? What about living expenses? Of course, her parents pay for everything. Did Samuel's inheritance go to Ella? Apparently, the house caught fire several years before Samuel passed away, and most of the savings were used up in moving and other expenses. Evelyn, with hardly any assets left, refuses to work. She never gets out from her room. How Evelyn plans to continue taking care of Ella is a mystery. Anyway, Evelyn continues to spoil her. Since childhood, she doted on Ella and nearly neglected Andrew, who says, "If I wait for Ella to marry, I'll be more than just old, I'll be a skeleton." And so, Andrew had no intention of waiting for her marriage. Well, that's true. Evelyn was strongly opposed to our marriage, but Andrew had intended to marry regardless of opposition. He brought me home out of a sense of duty to report as an adult, not intending to listen to her complaints. Instead, "Well, that's the situation, so I'm getting married." He ignored Evelyn's complaints and unilaterally declared our marriage. Naturally, she vehemently refused to attend our wedding. "Don't worry, I wasn't planning on inviting you anyway." But Andrew also said, while I wondered if this was okay, I also felt that if we were to marry, there was no other way. And so, after getting married, we hardly ever returned to the in-laws' house or participated in anything like family gatherings. Evelyn herself doesn't seem to mind since she cares about Ella but not so much about Andrew. We also felt more at ease about it. But then one day, I was notified that Evelyn had collapsed at a store during shopping and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I tried calling the in-laws' house, registered as her home number on her mobile phone, but no one answered, and it seemed our home was listed as the next contact. There's no way Ella wouldn't be at the in-laws' house. Typical of her, she probably pretending not to be home. Completely hopeless. It seems Evelyn had a myocardial infarction and needed surgery, so they were seeking familial consent. In a panic, I contacted Andrew, got his permission for the surgery, and then rushed to the hospital. Evelyn was unconscious for about 3 days after the surgery, but on the 4th day, she woke up, and by the 5th day, she was able to converse with the nurses. When we were informed by the nurses that she had been moved from the ICU to a regular room, we brought some clothes for her, but why is a stranger visiting me? What? Upon seeing me and Andrew, Evelyn didn't thank us but instead snapped at us. We didn't want to visit her either. But it's not like we have a choice when Ella wouldn't step out of the house for anything. Andrew was of the mindset that there's no need for us to visit her, was the stance. Thinking it would only cause trouble and be a hassle since we'd likely be unwelcome. But Ella refuses to go to places with lots of people like hospitals. Moreover, we had to talk through the door because she wouldn't come out of her room. Naturally, Andrew yelled, "In such an emergency, you could at least cooperate with the family. You can go to anime events, so you should be able to go to the hospital." But it had no effect. She just went silent, and the conversation ended there. So, reluctantly, we ended up visiting Evelyn in Ella's place. Andrew, infuriated by Evelyn's rudeness, told me, "You don't have to visit her anymore. Just leave her in dirty clothes every day." But that's hardly appropriate. It's a shared room, and dirty clothes would be a nuisance to the other patients and nurses. Since Andrew works during the day, I'm the only one who can bring her clothes to the hospital on weekdays. So I don't really want to, but I'll bear with it and go to the hospital," told Andrew. Andrew looked genuinely sorry. "If you ever get too fed up, just throw the clothes somewhere and run back home without going to the hospital," he said, but I thought, let's do my best as his wife. However, every time I showed up at the hospital, Evelyn would say, "The nurse said my daughter was here, and I thought it was Ella, but it's you, a stranger." She complained about not considering me her daughter, and how seeing my face made her feel worse, saying whatever she pleased. It was clear to me that this was harassment, especially since Evelyn knows very well that Ella wouldn't come to the hospital. There was even a time when she threw the things I brought at me, almost hitting another patient, and I had to apologize. Of course, she didn't apologize, I was the one who kept apologizing. With her acting however she pleased. "I don't feel like your daughter either, but I'm the only one looking after you now, so please bear with it," I retorted. Then Evelyn, "Ella would never say such a thing. You and Andrew are really not endearing," exploded. Of course, the nurses scolded us, and I had to apologize again on behalf of Evelyn, who refused to, but the situation didn't escalate further. Is there really no way to deal with this selfish Evelyn? After a stressful month, finally she was discharged. With her out of the hospital, we returned to our peaceful days, and to our joy, we found out I was pregnant. Andrew was overjoyed. It's still small and knows nothing yet. But he would come every day, pressing his ear to my belly. "Are you in there?" asking. Thinking he's silly, yet I understand his excitement and am happy he's so delighted about our child. As a mom and as a wife, I'm determined to give birth to this child healthily. My parents were also thrilled when we announced the pregnancy, and it has become their weekend joy to look for baby socks and clothes, even though we don't know the gender yet, so don't buy anything. Although I mentioned it, I'm a bit worried they might end up buying both boys' and girls' clothes anyway. In the midst of everyone being elated about the new life, we didn't tell Evelyn about the pregnancy. It was Andrew who said it would be better that way. Evelyn might start saying who knows what, being upset that her first grandchild would be my child, especially since we married before Ella. He seemed concerned about my mental well-being. I thought it might be better to report after the baby is safely born and things have settled down. Andrew believes even that isn't necessary, but I figured we'd just play it by ear depending on the situation at the time. However, as the birth approached, Evelyn suddenly showed up at our house. I was contemplating pretending not to be home to avoid showing her my pregnant belly when my mobile phone rang with a call from Evelyn. It seems she heard the ringtone through an open window, as it was summer. Evelyn raised. "Come out here, now." Her voice. I usually keep my phone on silent mode, so why did I have the sound on today of all days? Cursing my luck, it was too late to do anything. With Andrew not home, I reluctantly opened the front door, and Evelyn squeezed through the slightly opened door. "Why did you get pregnant?" As soon as she saw me, Evelyn exploded in anger. Not even glancing at my belly. It was as if she had known about my pregnancy from the start, leaving me dumbfounded. Then, "Some neighbor mentioned seeing you at the OBGYN, congratulating me on Andrew's wife being pregnant. What's there to celebrate?" Evelyn fumed. So, she had learned of my pregnancy through someone else. Despite choosing a hospital far from the in-laws' house, she found out anyway. Seeing my slightly pale face, Evelyn said, "It seems you do feel somewhat guilty for getting pregnant before Ella." She gave a completely off-base response. "I don't feel even a shred of such guilt. You should know, the first child to be born should be Ella's. We don't need a child from someone as shameless as you who doesn't understand family hierarchy." Evelyn then suddenly kicked my belly. Unable to protect my belly completely, I crumpled to the ground from the shock and pain of the kick. What should I do? There's no severe pain, but I felt a flow of liquid in my lower body. As I tried to flee from Evelyn, she grabbed my collar. "Understand this? The first to give birth should be Ella. Don't you dare have a child until Ella is married. Give up on giving birth." Then she kicked me in the back. I felt an uncontrollable flow of liquid from deep within me. My water broke. Evelyn continued saying other things, but in my panic, I couldn't listen, focusing solely on the emergency. Her leaving seemed like I was admitting guilt in her eyes as she spat out. "Got it now? We don't need your child." And left. Snapping back to reality at the sound of the door closing, I didn't know what to do. First, I had to check on my baby, so I called the hospital with trembling hands, rushed into a cab, and headed there. Unfortunately, Andrew was on a business trip for 2 days. His supposed supervisor had been hospitalized due to an accident, and with a shortage of staff, Andrew had to go. He tried to refuse, citing his pregnant wife, but they wouldn't listen, and he complained about it. "It's okay. I can manage on my own for a couple of days. Don't worry and just go on your business trip." I reassured him, now feeling extremely vulnerable. Tears streamed down my face from anxiety as I called Andrew, sobbing and explaining the situation. "Understood. Work doesn't matter at this point. You and the baby are what's important. I'm coming back right now, wait for me." Andrew returned by that evening, as he promised. There might have been complaints about him abandoning work. If they complain, I'm prepared to change jobs, so don't worry. But Andrew said, "I'm lucky to have such a wonderful husband." Fortunately, there were no issues with the baby, but given the proximity to the due date, we immediately prepared for birth. After the child was born safely, we should have been filled with happiness, but then Andrew said seriously, "Just because the child was born safely doesn't mean I can forgive my mother's actions." He was still furious about Evelyn's behavior on that day. Then came the fateful day. About a month after I was discharged from the hospital. From the morning, Andrew took me and our daughter, Grace, to the in-laws' house. He didn't ring the doorbell but instead used his key to enter. Evelyn, who appeared to have been watching TV, was startled by Andrew's. "What? Why are you here all of a sudden? You should have told me you were coming." Sudden appearance. It was understandable why she panicked. The usual calmness was gone from Andrew, who didn't glare at Evelyn but entered with a cold, emotionless expression, making a loud noise as he opened the door. It was an unusually rough manner for him. Ignoring Evelyn's protests, Andrew headed straight for Ella's room. "What do you think you're doing?" Evelyn followed him. Andrew stopped in front of Ella's room, took a breath, and then threw his body against the door. The room had been locked at Ella's request, so breaking the door seemed the only way in. "Andrew, what are you doing?" Evelyn panicked. Without a word, Andrew kicked the door down. "Stop it!" Evelyn tried to hold him back, but Andrew brushed her off without a word. After a few kicks, the door was about to give way, and with a final charge from Andrew, it fell inward. Ella, in dirty pajamas with overgrown bangs, looked up in shock. "Come here." Andrew grabbed Ella's hand and dragged her out of the room. Of course, Ella screamed, "No, stop!" But Andrew didn't listen. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. "Stop it! That's cruel!" Evelyn sided with Ella, but her words didn't reach the furious Andrew. He threw Ella outside. "Go outside for once," he shouted. Ella cried like a child, with Evelyn comforting her. "Why would you do something so cruel?" Evelyn raised her voice as if she were in the right. "What? It's kindness. A woman over 30, not working, making her mom pay for her living expenses while cooped up in her room? That is not kindness. It's not your place to decide that. Then can mom make that decision? No, you won't. Can't you see it's unfortunate for Ella to live like this? What? After having a heart attack, you still don't get it? You won't live forever. Who will take care of Ella then? Someone who can't even look after herself. Will leave money behind. Your concern is unnecessary. Then who took care of mom's hospitalization? Ella just stayed home. Amelia did everything. She just did it because she wanted to. It's not my concern. Yeah, but who will look after Ella if something happens to her? We won't. Or does mom plan to live another 100 or 200 years to take care of her? That's. And how is a woman who stays in her room going to get married? The first to give birth has to be Ella. Are you out of your mind? Andrew's words were too rational, leaving Evelyn looking at him in shock. She probably never thought deeply about it, believing she'd always be there to protect Ella. "Excuse my frankness," I said, causing Evelyn to look at me with disdain. "If you and Samuel had properly guided Ella towards social reintegration, she might have already been married by now. But Samuel, now deceased, and you, allowed Ella to live without working, fulfilling all her desires, providing a life without hardships. She is now 30. It's almost too late for her to return to society, but postponing it further won't do her any favors. Job opportunities decrease with age, and without any special circumstances or social experience, she will have limited employment options. If you truly care for her, shouldn't you encourage her to go outside instead of letting her stay cooped up at home? It's only going to make things harder for her." Evelyn's face turned red at my words. You shut up!" she yelled. "Think becoming a mom makes you knowledgeable? I've raised 2 kids. I know much more about parenting than you. Don't meddle in family matters. Seeing Evelyn gasping for breath in anger, Andrew scoffed. Then it's a failure in parenting. You've raised a child who's stayed in her room till 30 without ever working, and one son who has disowned you. Let me make it clear, I do think Ella is also a victim here. Someone should have strictly corrected her when they knew the reason she started secluding herself, emphasizing it was her responsibility. It's okay, she will manage everything. Maybe it's indeed better for her to start working now, she's smart. She'll find a job soon enough, Evelyn said, patting Ella's back. However, Ella looked pale. No. Impossible. And muttered. Andrew and I both were convinced it was hopeless. Evelyn must have realized it too. As long as I'm here, you will be fine. But she put on a brave face. Humph. Well, good luck living happily with Ella, who probably won't get married in her lifetime. Just don't involve me from now on. What? Evelyn's bewildered response was met with Andrew's mocking laughter. What? You thought you'd make me take care of you when you're old, and Ella can continue living her spoiled life? You're clueless. Evelyn was at a loss for words, apparently having exactly those thoughts. Well, according to you, Ella is supposed to get married, so maybe her future husband can support both Mom and her. Nice family plan there. We'll do our part by ourselves too, Andrew said mockingly, his eyes not sharing the humor. Seeing this, Evelyn looked as though she was about to say it was over, her expression filled with despair. You're thinking of disowning me? Your only mom? Only mom? Don't make me laugh. I hardly felt cared for. You made me do all the household chores while letting Ella do whatever she wanted since we were kids. And kicking Amelia's belly during her pregnancy, as if I could ever forgive you for not only attacking me but also my wife. Andrew's sharp gaze silenced Evelyn, who just stared at him. Let's go. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said. Evelyn screamed after us. Please, think it over. But he didn't look back. After that, Evelyn tried reaching out multiple times through calls and visits. Please, at least take care of Ella. But he refused. It's absurd for someone who hasn't lived properly to ask for help so easily. Rejecting her with logical reasoning and keeping her at bay. Eventually, as our children grew, we moved away, leaving no contact information for her. We've completely cut ties. The last I heard, Ella couldn't stick to vocational training and was constantly fired from part-time jobs for being late or absent without notice. Shockingly, when Ella complained about being reprimanded for her lack of enthusiasm at one part-time job, considering it harassment, Evelyn went to the supermarket where she worked and shouted at them, thinking she was pitiable. It's likely Ella will never work properly. We need to make sure she doesn't depend on us in the future. Andrew and I agreed. The prospect of Ella living properly after Evelyn's gone is dubious, but thinking about it is too scary, so we try not to. Despite Evelyn's claims of leaving money and taking care of Ella for life, she ended up struggling financially. Even past 60, she worked part-time to support Ella. It should have been the other way around. It seems she finally realized she should have encouraged Ella to go out more, but it's too late. Evelyn feels the weight of having to carry Ella, who can't do anything for herself, for the rest of her life. As for me, after our first child, we quickly had a second one, and now we're a lively family of 5. Though I was worried at first, it turns out you can manage surprisingly well. Andrew helps with childcare and cooks 3 times a week. He might actually be better at cooking than me, and his repertoire of dishes seems to be larger than mine. He's also improved his baking skills, a hobby he started on his own, and recently, it's become common to see him in the kitchen with the kids on weekends. No matter how you look at it, he's a wonderful dad. However, it seems he's not good at cleaning. He's the type to clutter things up before realizing it, thinking if things are put together, they're tidy, and he struggles to decide what to throw away. So, I mainly handle the cleaning. It's nice that we can complement each other's weaknesses. Maybe it's because they see the way we live, but our children teach each other what they're good at, helping one another with their studies. Since no one can live alone, we need to support each other. I hope our family continues to support one another forever. I'm happy every day, surrounded by such a caring family.